Welcome back to WrestleSpective, your home for all the lost, obscure, and defunct of pro wrestling. For generations of wrestling fans, there was one time slot that felt almost sacred: Saturday night, 6:05 p.m. Before DVR and streaming created a world where anything was available at any time, wrestling fans across America knew that when the clock hit 6:05 on the Superstation, it was time to sit down and watch professional wrestling. World Championship Wrestling Saturday Night wasn't just another TV show. It was appointment television. For decades, this single time slot would serve as a flagship for multiple wrestling promotions, launch the careers of countless legends, and play host to some of the most memorable moments in wrestling history. From dusty television studios in Georgia to the chaotic years of the Monday Night War, this was the show that defined Southern wrestling and influenced all of pro wrestling. This is the history of WCW Saturday Night. The story of WCW Saturday Night actually begins long before WCW even existed. In late 1971, Georgia Championship Wrestling made a decision that would impact the business maybe more than anything else they ever did. The promotion moved its weekly television program from Atlanta's WQXI to Channel 17, WTCG. At the time, WTCG was a relatively small independent station, owned by a young media entrepreneur named Ted Turner. Turner had massive ambitions for his station, and wrestling would soon become one of the key pieces of that puzzle. In 1976, Turner made a move to push the station into the future, when WTCG began transmitting its signal via the Satcom-1 satellite, the same satellite that beamed HBO, turning the Atlanta-based channel into the first true cable superstation. This meant that suddenly viewers all across the United States could tune in and watch programming from Atlanta. For Georgia Championship Wrestling, this changed everything. Because as a member of the National Wrestling Alliance, most NWA promotions were confined to their regional territories, including the stations that their TV shows aired on. But Georgia Championship Wrestling was now being broadcast coast to coast. For the first time ever, a regional wrestling promotion had national television exposure. In 1979, Turner changed the station's call letters. WTCG officially became WTBS. Throughout the early 1980s, Georgia Championship Wrestling quickly became one of the most popular programs on the entire network. The show aired on Saturday evenings, and by the time the 80s rolled around, fans knew exactly when to tune in: 6:05 p.m. Not 6 o'clock or 6:30, Turner time, 6:05. That oddly specific time would become one of the most beloved traditions in wrestling television history. In 1983, to make the program feel less regional and more national, Georgia Championship Wrestling changed the name of its flagship program. The show would now be called World Championship Wrestling. And with that name change, the stage was set for what many fans would later remember as one of the greatest weekly wrestling programs ever produced. The show had everything Georgia Championship Wrestling fans wanted: squash matches with stars, intense rivalries with wild angles, and perhaps most importantly, the legendary interview podium with Gordon Solie, where wrestlers delivered fiery promos that got butts in seats. For wrestling fans in the early 1980s, this was must-see television. But that would all change on one infamous day in the summer of 1984. On July 14th, 1984, wrestling fans across the country tuned into the Superstation expecting to watch World Championship Wrestling. Instead of Gordon Solie, they were greeted by a very different face: Freddie Miller introducing Vince McMahon. McMahon had just purchased a majority stake of Georgia Championship Wrestling for roughly $750,000 from Jack Briscoe, Jerry Briscoe, and other shareholders orchestrated by Jim Barnett. His purchase of GCW served one purpose: expand the reach of the World Wrestling Federation and bring the product to the entire country. By acquiring GCW's valuable TBS time slot, Vince now had a home on two of the largest cable channels available, as the WWF already had programming on USA Network. And according to Vince and other sources, TBS was probably available on more cable systems than USA. So in terms of visibility, it was a far better deal for the WWF. But there was one problem: the WWF product was completely different from what viewers were used to seeing on the Superstation. GCW emphasized an athletic, grittier in-ring style and more grounded characters. The WWF presentation wasn't what it would become, but it was the dawning of Vince McMahon's version of sports entertainment. And they hated it. The backlash was immediate. Within a single day, WTBS reportedly received over 1,000 phone calls from angry viewers asking the same question. Where did our wrestling go? Things only got worse when Turner realized that McMahon had failed to deliver the promised original programming. Instead of producing new shows every week for the time slot, the WWF was airing matches that had already been broadcast in its northeastern markets. Ratings plummeted, viewers continued to complain, and Ted Turner was furious. Turner allegedly turned to one of the few people still connected to the original Georgia promotion, Ole Anderson. Anderson had refused to sell his stake in Georgia Championship Wrestling and was allegedly asked to help create a replacement program. The result was a new promotion called Championship Wrestling from Georgia. Turner gave them a Saturday morning time slot at 7 a.m. He also gave another time slot to Mid-South Wrestling. These decisions frustrated McMahon even further, and by March of 1985, he decided to cut his losses. McMahon sold a coveted Saturday night time slot to Jim Crockett Promotions, again facilitated by Jim Barnett. And that decision would usher in what many fans considered the golden era of the show. Jim Crockett Promotions and their Mid-Atlantic Championship Wrestling took over the Saturday night slot in 1985, and immediately began producing 2 hours of original programming from the WTBS studios in Atlanta. This period from 1985 to around 1988 is widely considered the most iconic era in the show's history. The presentation was simple, but it worked. Wrestlers cut promos at the podium with Tony Schiavone or David Crockett. Angles helped storylines develop week after week, and matches featuring stars felt important. It was also during this time that countless talents were elevated and unforgettable moments were created. The Four Horsemen dominated anyone that stepped to them in the WTBS studios. Dusty Rhodes delivered iconic promos almost every week.
It always seems to be hard time. Always hard time. Let me tell the National Wrestling Alliance something. Let me tell Jim Crockett something. Let me tell the referee something. Let me tell Ric Flair something. Let me tell Tony Blanchard something. Let me tell Arn Anderson something. You know, I usually get kissed with something like that. You know, why did you take everything? Come around out here, come in, dog. Why don't you just take everything? You took my world title, you took my national title, you taking my pride. You might as well have my clothes. You might as well take my clothes. That's it. You might as well take everything I got. I mean, you got everything else, you might as well take it all. You know what I mean? Just take everything I got. I don't care what else it is, just take all my...
And guys like Magnum TA and the Midnight Express established themselves as a force to reckon with. The show became the beating heart of the NWA. But behind the scenes, Jim Crockett Promotions was facing serious financial trouble, and that only compounded over the years as the company became more and more successful. And in 1988, the entire wrestling landscape changed yet again. That year, Ted Turner made another decision that would alter wrestling history. He purchased Jim Crockett Promotions. And with that acquisition, a new company was born, World Championship Wrestling. The name of the Saturday night program had now become the name of the promotion itself. In 1989, the show moved from the WTBS studios to a venue that would become legendary among wrestling fans, the Center Stage Theater. Center Stage had an intimate feel with the crowd right on top of the action, and the atmosphere gave the show a completely different energy. The venue would host countless iconic moments during the early WCW years. But the show itself would undergo another transformation in the early 1990s. In April 1992, the program was officially renamed WCW Saturday Night. This reflected an overhauled look and presentation as WCW would experiment with the format, switching to a talk show-like setup with Jim Ross as host featuring matches from TV tapings.
Hello everybody! And from the studios of World Championship Wrestling, this is WCW Saturday Night! And here's your host, Jim Ross!
Up to you, Big Jim Ross!
Thank you very much and welcome everyone to a very special edition. This is WCW Saturday Night and we're happy you're a part of it. Ladies and gentlemen, you're going to see Flying Brian defend the light heavyweight championship of the world on this broadcast. Also, we'll be taking a look at the United States heavyweight champion Ravishing Rick Rude.
The show returned to a more traditional wrestling format come the summer of '92, but WCW still continued evolving the presentation. By the end of the year, the entrance setup was redesigned. Gone was the awkward locker room style stage. Instead, it was replaced with a more traditional arena entrance setup. But what I consider the most iconic version of the show's look would arrive 2 years later. In March 1994, WCW underwent another major transformation, because the company had just signed the biggest name in all of wrestling, Hulk Hogan. Potentially in anticipation of Hogan's arrival came a completely new look for WCW Saturday Night earlier in the year. The new set featured a futuristic sci-fi style design. Flashing red lights, sliding entry doors with billowing smoke, it's very cool. For many fans, this is the version of WCW Saturday Night that they remember most vividly. Though according to one WCW employee who worked there at the time, the transformation was largely cosmetic. That former staffer later joked, "Center stage used to be a rat hole in the grossest part of Atlanta. Then the first day Hogan came in, they put curtains up everywhere so you couldn't see how bad it looked." It might have been a rat hole, but on television, it looked spectacular. Throughout its history, WCW Saturday Night hosted numerous memorable matches and moments. In November 1989, Rick and Scott Steiner defeated the Fabulous Freebirds to win the NWA World Tag Team Championship. In 1993, the Hollywood Blondes came to an end when Steve Austin turned on Brian Pillman. The show even experimented with interactive concepts that were ahead of their time. During certain episodes, viewers were invited to call in and vote for the night's main event. One such broadcast resulted in an impromptu match between Sting and Ric Flair. The concept worked well during live broadcasts, but when WCW attempted the idea with pre-tape shows, fans quickly realized that their votes couldn't possibly be influencing matches that had already been filmed. Another highlight came when Big Van Vader brutally powerbombed Cactus Jack onto the concrete floor. The angle launched a violent feud that culminated in a Texas death match at Halloween Havoc '93. It was also where Macho Man Randy Savage jumped from the WWF to WCW in December of '94. But just as Saturday Night was reaching another peak, WCW launched a new show that would completely reshape the company. In September 1995, WCW debuted a brand new television program, WCW Monday Nitro. The show aired live on TNT and was designed specifically to compete with WWF's flagship broadcast, Monday Night Raw. And almost overnight, Nitro became WCW's top priority. Saturday Night was still around, but it was no longer the centerpiece of the company. After Nitro's debut, the purpose of WCW Saturday Night started to change. Rather than being the main show, it became a platform for mid-card talent and rising stars. Cruiserweights, young prospects, future main eventers, the show helped prepare them for bigger opportunities. Interestingly, despite appearing frequently via promos during this era, Hulk Hogan only wrestled once on WCW Saturday Night. In March 1996, Hogan teamed with Randy Savage against Shark and Barbarian of the Dungeon of Doom. The match quickly broke down into an all-out brawl and ended in a disqualification.
Oh, man! Uncensored, come and get it! Wow!
Hulk Hogan, the Macho Man, in the right frame of mind. Look at it.
Yeah.
They're just holding the Taskmaster up and chopping away, pushing the Taskmaster.
Wow.
Meanwhile, WCW Saturday Night also began traveling more frequently. Starting in 1996, the show moved away from center stage and began filming episodes at locations like Disney MGM Studios and Universal Studios, Florida. And despite its reduced importance, the show still produced some notable moments. Goldberg continued building his undefeated streak on the show. Booker T appeared regularly while working his way up the singles ranks. At one point, Booker even faced Bret Hart in a match that helped elevate his credibility. But by the late 90s, another new WCW program would further push Saturday Night down the hierarchy. In January 1998, WCW launched another primetime show, WCW Thunder. With Nitro on Monday and Thunder on Thursdays and then Wednesdays, Saturday Night effectively became third-tier programming. The show became very boy-heavy, to steal a line from OSW. And it only got worse going into 1999.
And speaking of Hulk Hogan, one of his best friends making his way to the ring right now. This is Dizzy Brutus Boulder, the Beefcake Zodiac, Goody Butcher Barber disciple, the man with no name, the great Leslie. Yes.
Eventually, most episodes were taped during larger arena TV tapings. The show was now primarily used to feature new talent or gimmicks, WCW power plant trainees, recaps of major storylines from other shows, and the main event might feature mid-level performers, surrounded by highlight packages and promotional segments. For longtime fans who remembered the glory years of the 80s and the early 90s, the change was impossible to ignore. The final episode of this incarnation of the show aired on April 1st, 2000. It was right at the cusp of the Bischoff-Russo creative era, and it's loaded with all your favorites from WCW in 2000, like hardcore champion Brian Knobbs, Chuck Palumbo, an unsigned Shark Boy, The Dog, Kid Romeo, and Chris Harris? Shortly afterward, the program was completely retooled, yet again being reduced to nothing more than a weekly recap show, as its time slot was moved earlier in the day and became WCW Saturday Morning.
Drop that clicker, kick your heels up. It's WCW Saturday Morning right here on TBS. Scott Hudson and the living legend, Larry Zbyszko, bring you the exciting week in WCW, and what a week it was.
The transformation essentially marked the end of the legendary show. On August 19th, 2000, the final episode aired. 7 months later, WCW itself would close its doors forever. Despite its quiet ending, the legacy of WCW Saturday Night still lives on. For fans who grew up during the Georgia Championship Wrestling and Jim Crockett Promotions eras, the 6:05 time slot remains a cherished tradition. In 2006, World Wrestling Legends held a pay-per-view in Orlando titled 6:05 The Reunion. The show featured stars from both the time slot's peak and its valley. When Ric Flair's last match was held in 2022, the event was deliberately scheduled to begin at 6:05 p.m., as a tribute to the Superstation days. Hell, this very video that you're watching now premiered on a Saturday night at 6:05 Eastern Standard Time, of course. Looking back at this show is a reminder of a time when wrestling television was appointment viewing, and every Saturday evening fans knew exactly where they needed to be, in front of their television, waiting for the clock to hit 6:05. Let me know any memories you have about the various incarnations of the 6:05 wrestling shows. Personally, I didn't have cable for my early childhood, so I remember the Monday Night War era of Saturday night being a special treat I got to watch when staying over my grandparents' house some weekends. If you'd like to support the channel, you can do so by subscribing or tracking me down on social media, either here or here. I'm Scott from WrestleSpective. Watch wrestling, love wrestling. Thanks for watching.